The sky above Outpost Vetra was always dark. The stars looked sharp through the glass walls of the station. Kyle Morgan stepped off the transport shuttle, his boots echoing against the cold metal floor. His orders were clear. He was to serve under the command of the Athari, an alien species who had little patience for humans. Kyle was 26. His brown hair was short. His eyes held no fear. He carried a duffel bag over his shoulder, moving with quiet confidence. Other humans in the group looked around with unease. The Athari guards watched them with blank stares. Commander Lyra Thalen stood near the landing bay. She was tall and elegant, with deep blue skin and silver eyes. Armor was sharp and bright. She looked at Kyle and the other humans with cold interest. To her, they were tools. Useful, but simple. Kyle felt her gaze on him, but said nothing. He lined up with the others. Lyra walked down the row, her hands behind her back. "You are here to follow orders," she said. "Not to ask questions. Not to show pride. You will work, and you will not speak unless spoken to." One of the humans shifted uncomfortably. Kyle remained still. Lyra stopped in front of him. Her silver eyes narrowed. She said, "Kneel." There was a pause. The room fell silent. Even the Athari guards turned to look. Kyle did not flinch. He slowly bent one knee, lowering himself without breaking eye contact. His face showed no shame, no anger, just calm. Lyra tilted her head slightly. She expected protest. She expected resistance, but Kyle gave her none. "Stand," she said. Kyle rose. The other humans looked at him with confused eyes. Lyra turned away, but her mind was unsettled. Why had he obeyed so icily? The humans were led to their quarters. The walls were gray and clean. Each was given a bed, a locker, and a tablet with their tasks. Kyle studied his orders. Maintenance, power grid checks, emergency drills. Days passed. Kyle worked harder than the others. Was never late, never complained. Followed instructions, even when they were unfair. Lyra noticed this. She began assigning him more difficult jobs. Tasks meant to break him. But Kyle never broke. He climbed through power shafts, repaired damaged cables during storms, cleaned reactor vents alone. He never asked for help. One day an alarm rang across the station. A power tunnel had collapsed. 3 Athari engineers were trapped. The oxygen was low. The doors were locked. No rescue teams were nearby. Kyle ran toward the scene. A guard tried to stop him. "You are not cleared," the guard said. Kyle pushed past him. He grabbed tools and entered the lower tunnels. He found the door to the collapsed area. Smoke filled the air. He used a torch to cut through metal. He reached the trapped engineers. One was injured. He carried him out first, then went back for the others. When the last one was safe, he collapsed beside them, covered in dust and blood. Lyra arrived soon after. She stared at Kyle, who was now sitting against a wall, breathing slowly. He looked up at her. "You disobeyed protocol," she said. Kyle nodded. "Yes, but they are alive." She said nothing more. She turned and left. But something inside her had changed. She could not stop thinking about him. The human who knelt without fear, the soldier who saved lives without orders. Kyle returned to his quarters. He cleaned his hands and rested. He did not speak of the rescue. He did not seek praise. But the other humans began to look at him differently. They saw more than a worker. They saw a leader. And Lyra, for the first time, began to wonder if kneeling could mean something else. Not weakness, but choice. In the cold silence of the outpost, something had shifted. Not with noise or power, but with a simple act. A man kneeling, not because he had to, but because he chose to. The days on Outpost Vetra passed slowly. Kyle kept working. He did not speak much. He followed orders, even the ones meant to wear him down. Others began to notice. Commander Lyra Thalen watched from a distance. She did not understand him. Most humans broke under pressure or pushed back. Kyle did neither. He accepted every task, not with pride, but with calm. She gave him more work, harder work, shifts with no breaks. Tasks meant for 2 people. Kyle completed them alone. He returned each day covered in grease and dust, but without complaint. One evening, Lyra called him to her office. The room was cold and wide, with a single desk and a large screen showing the stars outside. "You disobeyed orders during the tunnel rescue," she said. Kyle stood straight. "Yes." "Why?" "Because it was right." She stared at him. "Right? That is not your role." "I know. But I do not need a role to do what is needed." She paused. His words were not proud. They were simple, honest. She dismissed him with a wave. That night, she reviewed the station reports. Kyle's name kept appearing. His tasks were marked complete with high accuracy. His team members mentioned his help, his patience. Some Ithari engineers began to trust him, but not all were pleased. Officer Bellis, a senior Ithari, disliked humans. He saw Kyle's growing respect as a problem. "The human should be reassigned," Bellis said during a command meeting. "On what grounds?" Lyra asked. "He is dangerous, too silent, too calm. He hides something." Lyra said nothing. She did not agree, but she also did not defend Kyle. Later that week, Lyra ordered a test, a stress drill. The humans would be sent to Sector 12, an old part of the station. The systems there were unstable. The task was simple: fix a broken relay in the power grid. Kyle led the team. The air was thick with heat. The floor trembled as old machines groaned. One man panicked. Kyle calmed him down. He moved slowly, checking the wires. He rewrote a damaged code line on the control panel. The relay clicked back to life. Then the lights flickered. Now a burst of heat surged through the walls. A fire started in the corner. Its alarms screamed. Kyle ordered his team to retreat. One of the team members fell. Kyle ran back, lifted the man, and carried him out. She saw how he moved, how he stayed calm even when things went wrong. When Kyle returned, his shirt was scorched. His face was marked with ash, but his eyes were clear. "Relay is fixed," he said. "Team is safe." Lyra nodded. She did not praise him, but she remembered the moment. The next morning, she called him again. "Why do you not resist?" she asked. Kyle sat across from her. "Goes fighting everything is not strength." "Then what is?" "It's doing what is right, even when it costs you." Lyra looked at him. For a second, she saw something she did not expect. Not a soldier, not a worker, but something rare. Kyle stood to leave. "Do you regret kneeling that day?" she asked. He turned. "No, I did not kneel to show weakness. I knelt to show you I would not be broken." She did not respond. Kyle walked out. The door closed behind him. Lyra sat in silence. Outside, the station lights dimmed for night cycle. The stars remained still. But something inside the walls of Outpost Vetra had changed. And Lyra knew, whether she liked it or not, that the human had passed every test. But she was beginning to wonder, was she the one being tested all along? Alarms rang through Outpost Vetra. Red lights flashed. The ground shook under their feet. Kyle was already moving before the call came in. Something had broken through the outer shield. It was not a drill. Strange and deadly alien species called the Varnock had attacked nearby systems. The outpost was supposed to be safe, but now 3 enemy ships were heading toward them. Lyra stood in the command center, giving fast orders. Her voice was clear, but behind her eyes worry grew. The outpost was not ready for war. The defense teams were small. Most soldiers were new. Fear spread among the ranks. Lyra needed someone strong to hold the line. She looked at the screen, then she spoke into the comms. "Kyle Morgan, port to weapons deck 3. Kyle arrived within minutes. He wore basic armor and carried a rifle. His face was calm. "You know, this is not your job," Lyra said. "I know. I came anyway, because people need someone to stand." Lyra stared at him for a moment, then gave him the layout. "We will be boarded soon," she said. "You will lead a mixed group, half Ithari, half human. Hold corridor 9. Kyle nodded. Understood. The corridor was long and cold. He met the mixed group there. Some were scared, others were unsure of him. Kyle walked to the front. "You don't have to follow me," he said. "But I'm not moving, not one step. If they come, we hold. That's all." There were no cheers, but no one left. The attack began. Explosions shook the walls. The lights flickered. Then came the sound of claws on metal. The Varnak were here. First wave hit hard. The creatures were fast, tall and full of rage. Kyle fired, steady and focused. He gave short, clear orders. Left flank. Cover. Push back. Athari soldiers fought beside him. Humans followed his voice. When one fell, Kyle pulled them back. When ammo ran low, he shared his own. They held the corridor. More came. Wave after wave. But the line did not break. News spread fast. Other squads who were retreating began moving forward again. Something changed in the air. Fear turned to fire. Back in the command room, Lyra listened to the reports. The front was holding. Kyle was leading. Even her most trusted lieutenants had not done so well under pressure. The battle lasted hours. At last, the Varnak pulled back. Their ships turned and left. The outpost was damaged, but still standing. Lyra walked down to Corridor 9. The walls were marked by burns and blood. Kyle sat on the floor, his armor cracked. He was cleaning his rifle. He stood when he saw her. The line held. He said. Lyra looked around. Her voice was quiet. You gave them something we couldn't. They needed someone to stay calm. That's all. No, she said. You gave them courage. You gave them a reason. Kyle said nothing. He just looked at the wall, at the marks left behind. She stepped closer. Why do you always obey, even when it hurts? Because real strength is not doing what you want. It's doing what's needed, even if no one sees. Lyra didn't answer. She turned and left, her thoughts full. The next day, there was a meeting among the command staff. The battle was over, but questions were rising. One officer asked, why was a human leading defense? Lyra looked around the table. Because he was the only one who stood without being told. Later in her report, she added one line. Kyle Morgan is not just a soldier. He is becoming something more. Around the outpost, changes followed. Humans were given more tasks, more say. Some Athari resisted. Others accepted, but all of them knew one thing. When the danger came, a human stood first. And Lyra, who once made him kneel, now watched him walk through the halls with quiet pride. Something had shifted. The silence was deeper. The looks were longer. No one saw Kyle the same way again. Kyle woke to a strange silence. The usual noise of drills and alarms was gone. The halls of the outpost were quiet. Something felt wrong. He walked to the main screen in the common room. The news came fast. A message from Alliance High Command. They had made a deal with the Varnak. In exchange for peace, they would give up some human sectors. Kyle stood still. Other humans gathered around. Their faces showed shock, anger, betrayal. Lyra was in a meeting with high-ranking officers. The decision had been made far above her. She had no say in it. Still, she was ordered to carry it out. The humans on Outpost Vetra were to be detained and prepared for transfer. She left the room with heavy steps. Kyle and a few others were already waiting. Guards stood nearby. Lyra stopped in front of him. You were to be moved, she said, by order of the council. Kyle looked at her. Moved where? To a Varna-controlled zone. The room went silent. Kyle slowly lowered himself to one knee. He did not fight, did not speak. He just knelt. Lyra felt a chill. This was not surrender. This was something else. The others watched in silence. Some followed him. More and more, dozens of humans knelt, calm and still. Lyra turned to the guards. Stand down. They hesitated. That is a command, she said. The guard stepped back. Lyra looked at Kyle. Why do you kneel now? To remind them, Kyle said. We kneel by choice, not fear. That image spread across the outpost. Humans kneeling, not as prisoners, but as people with will. Even some Aetheri officers stopped to watch. Some lowered their heads in respect. Later that night, Kyle was taken to a private room. Lyra met him there. She paced the floor. They want to make an example of you, she said. To show the others that humans must obey. Then let them, Kyle said. But not here. Not quietly. You will die, maybe. But how we stand, how we fall, it matters. Lyra looked at him. Something in her broke. Shh. Not out of weakness, but from truth. You should escape, she said. Go now. I can open a path. No, Kyle said. If I run, they win. She sat down, her voice low. Then I will stand with you. The next morning, the council ship arrived. A high commander came to take the humans. His voice was sharp, his tone full of power. Lyra met him at the gate. You will not take them, she said. You are out of line, the commander said. Then remove me. Kyle stepped forward. The humans lined up behind him. Some Ithari joined them. The outpost was no longer divided. It was one voice. The commander looked around. He called for backup, but no one moved. Even his own guards stood still. I left shouting threats, but the message was clear. They would not kneel to fear. The next days were tense. Messages flew back and forth. The Alliance had a choice: force control or change. Under pressure, the deal with the Varnock was broken. Human zones were kept. Kyle's act had turned into a movement. Not just here, but across other stations too. Lyra stood in the control room, watching a new flag rise, a symbol of unity. It's not of human rule, but shared respect. She turned to Kyle. You didn't fight with fists, you fought with silence. Sometimes silence is louder than war, he said. She gave a small nod. And now, what will you do? Turn home. There are others who need to know this story. Kyle packed his things. The same duffel bag, the same steady steps. As he left the outpost, many watched him go, not with sadness, but with deep respect. Lyra stood at the gate. She gave him a final salute. You taught us what it means to kneel. Kyle nodded, and what it means to rise. Then he walked into the transport ship, leaving behind a place that would never be the same again. Months passed. The story of Outpost Vetra spread fast. People across human space talked about the man who knelt without fear. Some called Kyle Morgan a symbol. Others called him a hero. But he never answered those names. Kai returned to Earth. He walked through his home city like a shadow. People noticed him. They pointed, some thanked him, but he stayed quiet. He didn't come back for fame. He visited old places. The small house where he grew up. The field where he trained alone. The street where he first wore his uniform. He left no message. He just watched and remembered. One day a group of young cadets saw him near a base. They ran to him. Are you really Kyle Morgan? One asked. Yes, he said. Why did you kneel that day? Another asked. Kyle looked at them. Because it wasn't about kneeling, he said. It was about showing them I wasn't afraid to kneel. The cadets listened. One of them said, I want to be like you. Kyle shook his head. You better. Back on Outpost Vetra, Lyra Thalon had changed. Her voice was softer now, but her mind was stronger. She led with more care, more balance. She often walked by the corridor where Kyle had once stood during the attack. His story had become part of the outpost. Ithari and humans now worked side by side, not because of rules, but because of choice. Things were not perfect, but the change was real. One day a new threat rose, not from the Varnock, but from inside the Alliance. A group wanted to erase human rights again. It spoke of control and order. Fear began to grow again. Lyra stood before the council. You forget too quickly, she said. The man who changed us did not do it with weapons. He did it by kneeling, by holding the line. He showed us that control is not power, choice is. Some listened, some didn't, but the voice of the past could not be silenced. A large event was held to honor peace. Leaders from across the systems came. Kyle was invited, but he did not go. Sent a message instead. Just a short one. Peace is not something you sign. It is something you protect when no one is watching. The message was played across all screens. It was simple, but people felt it. Back in his town, Kyle sat on a bench. An old man sat beside him. You that soldier boy? The man asked. Used to be, Kyle said. Heard you stood strong. Heard you knelt too. Both are true, Kyle said. The old man smiled. Most folks don't understand. Sometimes the one who kneels is the strongest in the room. Kyle nodded. Later that year, a statue was built on Outpost Vetra. Not of a man holding a weapon, not of a man standing tall, but of a man kneeling, head up, eyes forward. No words were carved, just a name. Kyle Morgan. Lyra visited the statue often. She brought young officers there. She told them the story. This is not a story of war, she said. It is a story of choice. of strength without pride. Somewhere far away, in a quiet corner of Earth, Kyle sat watching the stars. He didn't need medals. He didn't want a legacy. He only wanted people to remember one thing. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes strength is silent. Sometimes it kneels before it stands. The galaxy moved forward. But the memory of Kyle remained. Not in books, not in speeches, but in the hearts of those who chose to be brave in quiet ways. And though Kyle never returned to the outpost, his spirit never left. It lived in every soldier who chose discipline over anger, in every voice that spoke when silence was easier, in every person who knew that the choice to kneel was not weakness. It was the start of something greater. And so, the story of Kyle Morgan ended the same way it began, without noise, without fame, but with meaning.